Good evening, and welcome to tonight's episode of Once Upon a Ramble, where us, the members of the Once Upon a Roll Dungeons and Dragons group, get around to talk about topics pertaining to our campaign or Dungeons and Dragons in general. Tonight, we continue our little series of talking about our players' characters with Telly's character, Neridiane, with Telly herself, Dune, and Nemo, as well as Lurking Duck. So, jumping right into it. Hello, Sally.
Hello?
So, starting off, and the first time looking through the player's handbook, looking at the characters, did you know that you were going to pick a rogue-like character? Because I know that, at least in video games, that's not your typical path.
But you only know one video game where that's not my typical path.
That's fair.
But, I mean, I asked June that what classes people already had, and then was like, well, okay, maybe, possibly we would need something stealthy, so I just leave because of that.
Alright. And
I don't like to stab things. Stealthily.
well, you certainly do that a lot. That is pretty much Neridiane's calling card. So, choose Rogue, even though I tried telling each of you, like, don't worry about what the other people are playing, but you chose Rogue, fit in better with the party, and it's come in handy, for sure, having that stealthy character, that one that can deal with locks and traps and the like, that has definitely helped a lot. But going back to character creation, so you choose Rogue, you go in there, and then you start looking at the races. What drew you to half elf? I believe that there was that you were the one that asked me specifically about Drow. I think you wanted to play a Drow elf again, but unfortunately for the campaign setting, that I had to sort of veto that. So was that just okay, fine, half elf then, or were there other options going through your head?
I don't know. I was just, I don't think Tapaxi was the option in player's handbook and everything, and I didn't want, for some reason I just didn't want to go full elf, and I didn't want to be a human either, so I mean, guess that half elf was like the option, good option.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, I feel like as far as the backstory that we constructed with Neridiane, half elf fits very well into that. I don't feel like it would have the same. It doesn't have the same feel whether if you were like a human or a full elf or anything. I feel like that was ended up being a very good choice on your part.
Mm.
You have this half elf rogue. Now, that class and race combination has probably been done thousands of times. What made you start thinking, like, what made Neridiane? Like, when did you start, what did you have envisioned for her personality? Did you think of those kinds of things as far as how you were going to play this character, or who this character was in your head, beyond their class and race and statistics?
I mean, I kind of went with, even though the parents aren't dead or anything, I kind of started it with the whole basic rogue thing that, oh yeah, no family and stuff like that, so, you know, just rogue. And otherwise, it's like, how do I explain it? I mean, I just thought that if I would go rogue, and rogues have been kind of like sneaky and not so possibly talkative people and in the games, or at least that's how they start. So I thought it would have been easier for me to be kind of like that, you know.
That's fair. And it's interesting that you brought up like the whole loner, no family rogue type person, because it ended up, and even to this day, being a very important part of the character of Neridiane, that being the whole family aspect, and the exact opposite of her being alone, pretty much.
Yeah, funny how that turned out.
So, make the character, we have this quiet, sneaky, secretive half-elf rogue, and we come up with this organization, this Thieves Guild-like organization that she's a part of, known as the Night Keepers, and that's why you decided to go with the thief archetype off the bat. We kind of discussed some of her backstory, some jobs that she have been on, whether for better or worse, and then it ends up that something strange begins to go on within the organization. You joined it to be a thief. You didn't join it to be a mercenary or an assassin or anything like that. You didn't want to get bloody. You weren't out to kill people. You're just out to make your own, right?
Yeah.
And so things started to change, and that's why you began to distance yourself from the core of the Night Keepers, and that's why you found yourself where we did when we started off. So Sally ended up playing the very secretive rogue type character pretty well at the beginning. I feel like for the most part, when we introduced it and we all started to play together, it was almost as if, from my perspective anyway, I'm not sure if this is what you intended, Sally, or what anyone else saw, but it was almost like Neri was staying to the edges of things, like almost like always looking for a way just to get out. But like, hey, can I sneak off here? Can I sneak off there? That kind of thing.
What the sneaks. Yes.
That's an interesting way of putting it. It does seem like that was kind of the case. Neri was somebody that we knew the least about for the longest period of time. So having that like kind of like mentality that Neri was like trying to escape whenever she had the chance it's interesting thinking about that now.
Because when we started off, none of you were together by choice, really. It was circumstance that made the group have to be a group, because it was either you guys prove you're innocent of this crime of murder together, or you all get accused of this crime of murder together.
Yeah.
And I guess we didn't really do Neri many favors as far as like trying to get her to like mesh well with the group, because the first thing that you guys learned about as far as uh this thieves guild, the Night Keepers, was one, your father figure Braun putting a crossbow to one of the other party members, because like who are you, how did you get here? And two, just finding that they were the ones who had done the murder, basically, and really ended up being the first little adventure that we had, and being the first kind of, I would guess, climactic boss battle type encounter with Rainan in their underground hideout place in the forest. So I'm not even at that point. I believe everybody knew of Mary's connection to them, because I think it had come out at that point.
At least some of it, yeah. And I mean, all of that kind of also led to that I almost wanted to quit, at least playing as Neri.
Was maybe a little bit of a mystery, but like, because the rest of the group, they were, I mean, you were a rogue, you were secretive, you were quiet, and had come, you were part of this organization, these Night Keepers, who had done some pretty bad things. So the rest of the group, like, not to, oh, but they were kind of like, it was like rightfully, there was a lot of weight and skepticism on the character of Neridiane. But in one way or another, through rough times we kind of pushed through, and people started to, see Neri as Neri, and you guys became more of a cohesive group, regardless of her background, regardless of that initial, maybe less than ideal first impression, just as far as how she had been brought up. But even then, I feel like that sort of does blend in and mesh with the whole personality of the character that she went through. Because that seems like something that Neridiane would go through.
Yeah.
In a way, it's almost similar to how we had introduced Era being a part of this organization that the rest of the group didn't necessarily like. Except it was at the very beginning where none of us really understood how to approach the situation in a positive way. But luckily, in my opinion, we got through it. And luckily, we got through it with Neridiane. Because, well, she got interested.
I don't know if I would have tried playing as at least as Neridiane. I don't know what I would have played. So yeah, I'm kind of glad that we got through it.
Yeah. So, the idea for Neridiane was to be this truly alone character. Something tragic had happened to her parents, where they were both ended up killed or dead by something. But we ended up going a very different direction, where neither of your parents are dead, as far as you know at this moment. But they were still distant and ended up being absent in your life all the same. So I feel like when I say she became interesting, it wasn't that she wasn't interesting to begin with. It's that I feel the more that had come out and the more that the character did interact with others and you began to flesh out and develop the character, that's more interesting than me than the mysterious, silent edge type character. They both have their interesting things, but I'm, as a storyteller, more interested in, a story that can be told. And even though, Mary is Neridiane and she is a woman of very few words, she still tells a very good story, even when it's just with her actions.
But the actions talk, not herself.
When she talks, it's usually with a few words.
Yeah.
Just a few words of motivation.
Very motivating. Yeah, sure. Pussies, guys.
Don't be pussy. Let's go. All right, no context. Moving on. So, at the beginning, I like how you had felt Neridiane and going through the story, the adventures, going through the very slow process of becoming a sort of cohesive, almost not even family, but just friends with the other people in the group. I feel like it took multiple life or death situations for you guys to be like, hey, maybe I can trust you enough to talk to you. But that was more, I think, us as players than anything. But even still, right now, where you see Neridiane, was that how you had envisioned her at the beginning? Were there moments in where you had seen her had to make the decision that her character would change from how you had initially envisioned it?
I don't know. I never really never envisioned anything. I just went with the flow, I guess you could say, more of a.
This is one thing that was persistent for a long time, I feel, was Mary wasn't always the most compassionate of people.
Yeah, that's
She
hard time for her, I
she
guess.
almost certainly wasn't a hero type, and
Oh.
she rarely ever cared about you know, collateral damage, let's call it.
Yeah.
But I feel like that has changed a little bit, at least when maybe faced with something like Corvath. I feel like she stepped up and, in a way, kind of, because the Neridiane that started off, I don't feel like she would have even maybe been involved in the whole process of raising the army and morale and gathering and doing the work to build up a city and a force to go and face this beholder and his army. That doesn't seem like the character that we started off with 3 years ago.
Yeah, definitely not. It's what I mean. At one point, I think I had also kind of like envisioned that. Okay, especially when we were supposed to get prom back, it's like, okay, I just need these guys to help me. I can't do it alone, but of course, if they don't help me, I'll just go alone. Anyways, I don't know. It definitely isn't the whole Neri thing to do, the whole helping to raise an army and stuff like that. I mean, I don't think she still even feels like she's like a hero or anything. And yeah, people can call her a hero, but she's just like, nah.
I mean, I would say that's pretty humble of her, but I don't think that it's even humility. I feel like that's honestly how she feels.
That's just how she.
Probably because she was like, so.
We don't decide for ourselves that we're heroes.
Yeah.
If you remember where that one's from,
Nope.
we heard it recently, Sully.
My brain is still at the moment mush, but I think I know.
So, out of curiosity, and I don't know if this is something that could be answered, but is there a reason as to why? Because I know Mary, in and of herself, she's very quiet self, especially to people she doesn't know. But like, what's her perspective and take on Era? Because as of now, in my perspective as Era, there isn't much there to go off, except maybe like a couple of agreements that they had, whether it's about like killing someone off or burning something. There's not much there to go off. Is there a reason? As is she off put by Era, or is she just simply disinterested? And then on top of that, how is her overall vibe with the group, as in Elevorn and Durand?
That's, I guess, take it one at a time then. Let's start going
Yeah,
over
sorry.
how Neridiane feels about the other members of the group. And since Magia is the one that brought it up, sure, let's start with the newest member of Eden, Era. So I feel like personally, this is from me looking at it as the Dungeon Master, as a spectator. Neridiane, I think, was actually one of the main characters for like pushing for Era to either go along with you guys or be part of it. Elevorn was probably the least at some points because the whole Phoenix Academy thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like Neridiane was probably the most accepting of Era at the beginning, at least. But Sally, how about you tell us how, like, you felt about, or how Neridiane felt about this new character, despite her being a part of the Phoenix Academy, who had, as you guys know, been a pretty big part of the Beholder that ended up spreading some pretty horrible things around the provinces.
Well, I mean, it's Neri. I mean, I guess since there was that whole thing that Phoenix Academy might be evil or something like that, that
Mhm.
whole that keeping one of them close to us is a good way to maybe have some information and stuff like that. That was like one point at least why she was more accepting, I guess. But I mean, in the end, Era has been useful, very useful with spells and
Thank
stuff
you.
like that. Even though Neri might not talk too much with Era, Neri kind of likes her, I guess, because yeah.
That's more than I thought I would get, so I'll take it.
And so that's interesting. The whole, all right, the like, keep your friends close but enemies closer type thing, right? That kind of mentality with Neridiane being like, all right, I'm not sure if I trust these people, so let's make sure that we keep an eye on one of them at least. I feel like you might have went a little bit overboard with that, however, with Isaiah. I think maybe a little too close.
Not close enough. No, still. Gotta get closer.
Alright. So let's move on to Durand. I don't feel like Neri and Durand had that much of an interaction at first. And honestly, their relationship has always been just that of sort of good acquaintances, I feel. They've always, it seemed like, had this sort of mutual respect for one another, but they never really interacted too much. That is until Durand became the overprotective big brother, but that's way further down the road.
True.
Yeah. That is true.
I feel like they were always around, and especially because back when Bask was traveling with you guys, it was always Bask and somebody else at the front of the line. It was always like Bask and Durand leading the charge, or Bask and Elevorn going off and doing something. So I feel like a lot of times Durand and Neridiane got kind of left back just to watch Bask and Elevorn go around and just talk to everybody, and they're just the two following around, just like, I'm the big brooding dragonborn, and I'm the put up silent over here little half elf, and we're just walking together as these two crazy people go around talking to everyone.
Oh, we both wanted to be edgy characters.
Yeah. And
We
to
found a
be fair,
kindred spirit in one another.
yeah.
Silently.
Silent kindred spirits.
You guys did though. Like, Durand was Neridiane's confidant. Like, Durand is the one that kept her secrets, who knew her secrets. You know, that's a big thing.
I think that Neri knew that though.
There is why I have that title to begin with.
The secret keeper.
Yeah.
The secrets.
Yeah, well, no, he didn't keep Neri's secret. He kept he kept Neri's secret because we'll get to that later. He also kept secrets from Neri for Braun.
Yeah.
That's a whole other thing.
For protection.
Yeah. So we got the kindred spirits kind of in the silent edgelords of Durand and Neridiane, at least back in the day, during their awkward teen years. We have Era, the gotta keep her close thing. Let's talk about Bask, because Bask and Neridiane had a very volatile relation. Bask, especially during his time as a holier-than-thou cleric, and only when it came to Neridiane, it would seem, though.
Honestly, I'm not completely sure what was that all about.
It was almost like the typical, cleric and rogue tension that's there, like the good guy who doesn't really like that the rogue is always out stealing and morally gray and ambiguous. But that was a thing, and I feel like it was interesting because when it came time for Bask to really come out with his feelings, even though it was assisted by alcohol, he came out to Neridiane. It was very, very weepy, but he chose to come out to Neridiane. So that's just an interesting little side note on a character that the player does not play with us any longer, fortunately. But then we have, in my opinion, one of the most interesting relationship dynamics that we have had throughout our campaign, and that is Neridiane and Elevorn. Because that has been a roller coaster. It ended up with them being like almost sisterly in how good of friends they are, but it was not at all that way for the longest time. Just like we said, when Neridiane started off, she was this shady character that was a part of this Nightkeepers organization, and she didn't speak on it much, and she was silent. So I feel like Elevorn's hyper overactive squirrel brain is like, this person's going to backstab us. She stabs these people. What's to stop her from stabbing us? But I'm not gonna talk for Nemo. Nemo, you can go ahead and explain.
Well, I mean, it was kind of like an intersection of backstories that were incompatible. Like, Elevorn is just like people. I want to understand people, and this people won't talk to me. What is... push the button. Push the button.
Push all the buttons.
But she was trying to push the button that made Neridiane talk, but she ended up just pushing all Neridiane's buttons.
Yeah, exactly. But that was her intention. It wasn't like to push her away. She was trying to like, hello, I want to talk to you, and you just kind of walk away. I'm like, all right, well,
Okay,
I'll try again later.
That's obviously the best thing to do.
I think so too. That's the best thing to do. Just try again.
Eventually it'll work. And eventually it did. After what I feel like is the climax of the growing tension between these two characters was the overall maybe not best experience in Vasselholm with the infiltration of the noble's house and the confrontation in the sewers below. That was the closest that we had ever gotten to in-game PvP.
Oh god, true.
Oh, God.
When Elevorn ended up just snapping, very angry, and turning into a bear.
Yeah, that was something.
I mean, Elevorn has done it before. She's done it since, but never really never like that. Like you could feel her primal rage.
Yeah.
But after that, I think you guys went through a period of cooling down where it was really no interaction between the two of you, kind of. But then I don't remember what it was, or where it started, or even if it was like something that just clicked, or whether it was a slow, gradual thing. But eventually, Neridiane and Elevorn seemed like they became like best friends, almost. I really want to hear it. I don't want to try this. I really want to hear you guys talk about it.
Well, we were in the Greymire Swamp on that little errand for the Marion. And I don't know, it was tense. It was hostile for a little bit. And then I think the fact that like we helped Grimgrom, too, like both of us jointly together. And then in addition to like just seeing her reaction to like what had happened to the other Nightkeepers. Like Ella's like, oh, she does feel things.
He has feelings. Confirmed.
Exactly. Like she was like angry and like she responded to something and like, sure it was trying to kill things, but any response is a good one. Like coming from like a place of like Elevorn just didn't understand,
Since then, I do feel like the two have become, good friends. You guys probably have. I can imagine Elevorn and Neridiane just gossiping, mostly Elevorn one-sided type of thing, and Neri just listening for the most part. At the same time, Neri in her own way, uh, it's like she goes and she talks to Durand and tries to push the whole Elevorn Durand thing a little bit.
Time.
That's-
This is gonna do it. It's so obvious. Except them.
That's an interesting part. Like that's just in my head. Like I probably go crazy with things like that, but it's like overactive imagination, right? But Neridiane, like we said, the brooding, dark, stealthy, quiet rogue who's just like in the corner in every single situation, but is just this presence is in herself probably reading romance novels or something like that when no one's watching. Like she's a bleeding heart romantic and trying to like get her good gossip in or whatever, trying to push Durand and Elevorn together. She's really sweet if you get to know her.
Well, I mean, okay, partially why Neri is pushing Ella and Durand together is because it's funny to see how Durand acts.
There, also comedy.
Everything's at my expense. Everything is at my expense.
It's to make Elevorn happy and to make Durand uncomfortable. And if we could do both at the same time, why not?
Yep.
My
Birds
God.
with one stone.
Win-win. Anyways, we talked a bit about the Greymire Swamp and that whole adventure, and I'd be remiss to speak about Neridiane without at least touching on Phantasm.
Oh my God. That
Yeah.
monstrosity.
That relationship. Yeah. That was
You had
Something.
seen this sickle, this curved blade that the lizard folk were using to sacrifice themselves to their god, basically. And after a fight with a Naga that claimed to be the avatar of said god, you saw that and was like, yeah, I'm gonna use this now. What were the thoughts there? Did you think me incapable of creating such a wicked item, such as a cursed one, or was it something that Neridiane was just like, it talks to me. That's cool. Nothing to be worried about. Let's do this. Why not? Let's see where it goes.
I mean, of course, it was for Neridiane. It was strange that a weapon was talking to her and everything, because she still doesn't understand magic and things quite well. But I mean, at that moment, it was also because the whole thing that we need to go and get rid of the bad night keepers and stuff like that, and she felt like she needed some power, and the weapon seemed to be powerful and stuff like that. So yeah.
It did end up being pretty powerful. And even at the beginning, like you had the weapon spoke to you. What was the decision to keep that to yourself? Were you worried that the others would try to take the weapon away from you, or what? That they would think you were crazy? I think they would think she was crazy, or what?
Yeah, that was like one part. Those were kind of like the things, that they would try to take it away, or just think Neri is crazy. Why is she talking to herself? I think there was a little moment at one point where, because Phantasm could talk to Neridiane in her head, but she couldn't respond mentally. She needed to say the things out loud. So there were a few times, I think, that when the others were like, "What are you doing? Who are you talking to?"
Yeah. So the only two that were there when Phantasm was introduced are Dune and Nemo. What were your thoughts on that? Because honestly, the weapon that you guys saw was designed in such a way that I didn't necessarily know who was the one, if anyone, that was going to take it. Durand could have taken it, but all people considered, I feel like Neri was probably the best choice if we were going to get the full Phantasm story out of it. But anyways, just backtracking, the first time that the weapon spoke to Neridiane, what were you thinking? Like, what was that reaction?
But as a player, I was like, oh, that's probably not good. but let's see what happens.
I don't quite know. At the moment, it was like, all right, hold on. So, as a player, or as Durand?
As a player.
As a player. Okay, so as a player, it was like, my God, I can't believe this son of a biscuit made a freaking cursed item.
What? You really can't?
No, I can't. Well, now, yes, I can.
What do you mean now? I haven't
Now,
I've
have you seen what you've put me through? Have you seen the slimes?
You haven't even. That was after the slimes.
Yeah, I know.
But I haven't introduced another cursed item yet.
Yeah.
Anyways, because I feel like there was a lot of times that, with regard to Phantasm specifically, and talking to you, it was like, very strongly, Durand feels one way about this cursed item and does not like Phantasm and all that stuff. But Dune was like, go for it, Neri, do it!
Yes, that is true. Yeah, I went through that whole entire thing. That's why I was asking, is it me or is it Durand? Because we feel entirely different on that one.
But it was that weapon that did end up killing Neridiane because of the cursed nature. Yeah, that was a player death that we had. Now
That happened.
that did happen, and we went through that experience of trying to bring back Neridiane and going through that sort of ritualistic raising spell and that whole event. You got to see the other side, or at least a part of the other side, for a while, Neri. And you got to find your way back, and then discarded Phantasm with the assistance of Galen, the cleric from Edgecliff. Now, I suppose my question for you is, knowing, because that was the first time that you had, in so long of using Phantasm, that was the first time that you had actually unlocked its potential, let's say. And one of the drawbacks of doing that is that after you take a short rest, there's that chance that it just drains you and kills you. Regardless of whether or not you had saved on that saving throw, I would have given you the information on the weapon in its entirety. Would you have kept Phantasm had Neridiane survived that?
Maybe. I have to say maybe.
You monster.
Yeah, that's
So, like, Neridiane might have kept Phantasm even after she got brought back from the dead.
I mean, though, well, maybe she wouldn't have kept it because, even though she, of course, she didn't know the full extent what it could do to her. It was just for, she felt like she could get some power out of it and everything to help bring down Corvette, but so, I mean, she died. She, it was just too much. She couldn't have finished what she wanted to do, so maybe she would have ended up, getting rid of Phantasm, even though if she would have saved on that, but because she died, yeah, and she realized that no, well, fuck, this isn't gonna work. I mean,
Yeah. Now, as scary and anxiety building as that was, Neridiane's death, I feel like, actually was a very important part of the story for more reasons beyond that bit of drama that it provided. I feel like it did a lot to push the story the campaign, really, the tone of it, into another different direction. Where, I'm not sure. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you guys can pinpoint another moment, but I feel like Neri's death and the fallout around that, and role playing that out and that whole experience through your characters was what turned our campaign into more of the very heavily role play focused one, where I could just sit back 20-30 minutes at a time and watch you guys take the story wherever you want to take it. That was the door opening and you guys stepping through and being like, we're going to make a soap opera now.
Very true. I don't think there was any other moment. I think it was really that, which is a little fucked up to say. Somebody had to. Well, death does impact people in a huge way. So, I mean, I guess it makes sense.
But what I'm saying, I guess, is that beyond just the characters and the story, I feel like the opportunity to role play in those moments, essentially sitting down and having to role play those feelings and that interaction and go through that sort of wave of varying emotion, is where, once we came out the other side with Neridiane back, I feel like you guys were markedly different in how you approached roleplay, and for the better. I feel like that's really when, Dune had always been a solid role player, and he had stellar moments before, but that's really, I feel, when, after that moment, was when Dune really picked it up and when really started to get into it. Sally with Neridiane was and still to this day amazing after that, even though she had always been getting better, like we all are getting better. But I feel like, personally, I just feel like everything just got taken to another level after Neridiane's death, and I almost wasn't ready for it. You guys took me by surprise.
Kicked it all into gear. Honest to God.
I do have a question though.
Yeah.
When Neri was playing guards, there was Avandra and there was the Raven Queen, but who was the third one?
The other guy, that was basically the embodiment of death itself. That was death.
I suspected that it might have been death, but I wasn't sure.
And I was waiting. I was honestly hoping you would try to sleight of hand some stuff in that card game. Like, let's see if you can literally cheat death.
Neri didn't want to take the risk. You don't fuck with guns.
You don't fuck with the literal embodiment of death itself. That might be a bit too much, even for Neridiane.
Yeah, at least at that moment. Maybe later. We'll see.
This is my first time,
Yeah.
Till next time, guys. Now, another thing that, kind of going back to the mechanical side, a little bit away from the story, is much like how Durand had wanted, or Dune had wanted something else from his character, and we ended up making his homebrew oath. You also wanted something a little bit different, something to spice up the rogue class with Neridiane, and you wanted to more lean into that whole dark shadow vibe of things. And for that, we looked at the monk class, because you had really liked that one just teleporting with darkness type of thing, and you wanted that, and that was too cool to pass up. And you're like, I need that. I don't care how much monk I need to take or how many points I need to just dump into my wisdom stat, I'm taking it, right?
Yeah, it was something I ended up really liking, so I was willing to sacrifice some levels to it.
Yeah. And so I feel like that when we were talking about multiclassing, there was a lot of people that were talking about it. We had Dune multiclassing into Paladin with Durand. We had Basque going cleric, multiclassing into warlock. And so at that point, it was like so many people are multiclassing, and so many people have these ideas for the flavor of their characters that they want to play, but they are mechanically ruining their characters. Right? By the time we get to higher levels, they are going to feel weak, and I didn't want that because obviously. So we went through and made some erratas, some decisions there. And with Neridiane, we had landed on the homebrew rogue archetype of Duskblade. Now, I'm not sure if everyone's looked at it. I know quite a few of you have. But essentially, it was taking the idea of one, the rogue, and two, some of the aspects of that shadow monk and making them into a rogue archetype. I feel like that's where you want Neridiane, is as this Duskblade character. And man, as far as the homebrew end of things, because it wasn't a homebrew campaign to begin with. We were very by the book at the beginning. We have slowly just become a campaign that if any traditional D&D player jumped into would have almost no idea of what's going on.
Good luck, Duck.
Oh, he's
Yeah,
a new
good luck.
So he's a new player, so he's going to be, corrupt from the beginning. He's going to be playing a modded version of the game from the beginning, and so he's not going to understand what the base game looks like.
He's gonna go to somebody else's game and be like, "What the hell game are you guys playing?"
I actually do have that issue with the other group because that DM is going by the books a lot. So sometimes I'm like, wait, what? But it's fun. It's fun. It's still
Where
fun.
the hell is
and
Xen in his flavor text?
Going to the other druid in the other group and like, why don't you just turn into a phoenix?
You're like,
Turn into a phoenix.
why aren't you turning into a phoenix?
Yeah, why don't you just turn into a phoenix or a unicorn? So yeah, we have quite a few homebrew things. Like not just the magic items, but as far as classes go, as far as wild shapes for our druid, as far as breath weapons for our dragonborn. Like our campaign has been so heavily modded from just over time. I haven't even really stepped back to think of how many homebrew things we added to it. Because honestly, I don't feel like we're a homebrew campaign. Because I look at stuff like the homebrewery with their crazy out of this otherworldly classes and race things, and I think that's silly. Who would ever do that? And then I'm gonna just go back to editing Duran's custom oath.
Yeah.
I would say we've come a long way. Everything seems relatively balanced, and
Yeah.
I think everybody got it.
Was the reason why we had talked about multi-classing so much instead of just let's make something from the ground up, was because I wasn't comfortable balanced. And once I got more of an understanding and more comfortable with myself being able to create something that I felt was mechanically balanced with other existing classes in the game, that's when we came up with all the homebrews. But we're not at the higher levels yet. We'll see how crazy some of your stuff is. I'm excited to see where Duskblade goes. It feels pretty good at the moment.
From what I've looked at it, every now and then it feels good.
Yeah. And I like that it kind of ties in with Neridiane personally, especially with the aspect of you guys' trip to the astral plane, where Neridiane was able to physically manipulate shadows there, and some of that, like, narratively, I guess, translated out back to the material plane.
That was very neat. And yeah, did that whole thing quite well. Yeah.
Well, you guys, I don't make the story good. You guys do. You're the main characters. It's all you guys. But anyways, since I liked how we ended up the last last one. I'm going to ask you one final question. In few words as possible, how would you describe Neridiane and her relationship with the group?
That's a question, yeah. I mean, considering all the things and stuff like that, I guess it's good. And yeah, I mean, even though I guess Neri still doesn't maybe show it well enough, but she likes them. Yeah.
No. I mean, that's good because for Neridiane, that's a pretty big step from where she started, because she wasn't really one to let people in that way.
She's already come so far under the umbrella of the Night Keepers and Brushburn, and those were very exciting stories, but even so, I feel I'm more excited to see where she goes without all of that.